My father and Anne Frank, who wrote her famous diary, were born in 1929, just weeks apart. Anne was exterminated in Auschwitz concentration camp just shy of her 15th birthday in 1944. My father lived till nearly 88 years old, free from persecution, in Sydney, Australia. The only difference between them was that my father was saved by two righteous Gentiles. Good evening. I've been invited along to talk to you regarding the theme of stand up, stand out, because something happened to me in my life that forced me to change career paths and take a good, long, hard look at those who do stand up and stand out, those who demonstrate the power of one for their actions. Let me just say, I'm 147 centimetres, or 4 foot 10 and a half in the old language, so I have to stand out pretty strongly to be heard, because when I stand up, you can't often see me unless I'm standing on a milk crate. But that didn't stop me tackling the theme of tonight's event, because my late father told me a story when he was 80 years old about our family, which changed me forever. And now I'm doing just that, standing up to stand out by talking about brave individuals and educating the masses on how we can emulate them. So in a moment, I'm actually going to ask you, the audience, to all stand up if you're only alive because of the actions of someone else. Now that can be as simple as you were crossing the road one day and you were with a friend or a family member and they quickly yanked you out of the way of a passing car, saving your life. Or maybe during your birth there was a complication and your parents told you that an amazing doctor saved your life. It can be anything as simple as that. But there are many examples, obviously. Or maybe, like me, you're alive because your parents or grandparents were saved by somebody, allowing you to be born one day. If any of this applies to you, would you please stand up now? Wow. That is pretty amazing, considering the size of this audience. That's, I reckon, about 25% of the audience. Okay, thank you very much. And you can pat yourselves on the back for standing up to stand out. So, if like me, that has happened to you, you know it's a pretty powerful thing. We all know how amazing a simple random act of kindness makes you feel. Have you ever smiled at a passing stranger and said hello to one, caught their joy at the unexpected gesture, or had it happen to you and then reflected inwardly on how good you feel? So when a life-changing act occurs, it's truly incredible. So who am I and why am I standing here talking to you? I'm Linda Royal, and I shouldn't be alive. The daughter of a Polish Jew born in 1929, odds were against me ever having been born, given that 95% of Polish Jewry was exterminated by Hitler. But two non-Jewish strangers, diplomats, risked their lives to save my family and 6,000 others, strangers that they didn't know. And that's a pretty big random act of kindness, but more on that soon. You probably don't know my name. I'd be surprised if you do, and it isn't mine I expect you to remember tonight. I'm not an actress, I'm not a social influencer, I'm not a politician. I was just a copywriter until my father told me the story of how he and his parents escaped Hitler. I realised then my purpose was to educate via film, which I'm currently developing, and book, which I've just had published last year, and I'm proud to say is already a bestseller. A historical fiction novel that is inspired by my family's true story of escape and the true story of Chiune Sugihara and Jan Zwartendijk. I know that's a mouthful, we'll get to that in a minute. Those two, the story of them is weaved through in a parallel narrative. Titled The Star on the Grave, through it I wish to immortalise these two brave men who stood tall and bright as shining examples of righteous souls who risked their lives to save those of strangers. Through entertainment, much fact can be learned by a global audience. The first one, Japanese Chiuni Sugihara, was the consul in Lithuania in 1938 to 1940. And he passed away in 1986. And he lived long enough to learn that he had saved thousands. Jan Zwartendijk, the Dutch consul, never told anyone about his wartime deeds. He was a very private man, and he passed away in 1976, having no idea how many he'd saved. He thought he'd only saved 2 individuals. Sugihara's life was spoken about more by his family, and here is his son Nobuki, with whom I am close friends and well connected, holding my book dedicated to his father. When I met him, I actually asked him if I could hug him, being the closest thing to the man to whom I owe my very existence. He was a little reticent, a little reserved, being Japanese, but with a wink and a smile from his wife, I went in for the kill and I got my hug. And so I want to delve into what it makes someone that righteous person. That is why I've been nominated to speak to you. What does it take, and how does the unique characteristic evolve and develop in someone to have the courage and impetus to be that one that stands up in support of and assists the racially discriminated, the downtrodden, the other? And how can we all learn to emulate that incredible attribute? Naturally, I want you knowing these individuals are shining examples of this because I'm alive because of them. But they also saved 6,000 other strangers, remember that. And they escaped Hitler's clutches at a very, very dangerous time. And they poured into Lithuania in 1940, where these 2 were stationed. Japanese diplomat Chiuni Sugihara happens to be known as the Japanese Schindler. Now, I'm not too keen on that title because I don't think every righteous act can be lumped into one basket. Not taking away from that extraordinary act, but each act is unique and precious. Schindler is only known so widely because of Spielberg's movie about him and Thomas Keneally's amazing book. But he doesn't define every righteous act, though he is now a household name, and that's something I hope to achieve with my 2 heroes. There are now as many as 500,000 descendants from those 6,000. That's what an incredible act this was. And they defied their governments with no agenda, no political or financial motive, but simply acted because in their minds it was the right thing to do. These extraordinary men were eventually honoured with the title of Righteous Among the Nations by Yad Vashem, the Israeli Holocaust Museum. This award is bestowed upon individuals who risked their lives to save the lives of Jews during the Holocaust. It all began with Zwartendijk, who issued papers to Dutch Curaçao from Lithuania to a Dutch couple, informing them they now needed to transit through Japan to get there. They went straight to Sugihara, who issued that transit visa. And in a matter of hours, on hearing of their success, word spread amongst the thousands of refugees, and they all approached Zwartendijk, who decided at great personal risk to issue thousands of people documents to Curaçao, even though they were not Dutch. Then Sugihara was inundated with those same thousands, needing those transit visas. Sugihara opened the curtains of his consulate one morning to find hundreds of desperate refugees crowded outside his gates. This continued daily for weeks. Sugihara knew all too well the plight for these Jews if they didn't get out. Japan was an ally of Nazi Germany, and he'd already personally witnessed the brutality and murderous intent of the local Lithuanians towards the Jews. He asked the Japanese government 3 times permission to issue transit visas. 3 times the answer came back, under no circumstances are you to issue transit visas to these Jews. But he couldn't abide by this, and in consultation with his wife, he decided that to not issue visas to these desperate people was to go against God, in his words. Here is my family's visa to freedom, a document that represents life to me. So if you take a good look, there are 3 nations represented here. It's a little bit hard to see, but on the left is Zwartendijk's Dutch visa. In the middle, handwritten in Japanese, is Chiune Sugihara's visa. And on the right-hand side is the Australian government's visa for my family of 6 months temporary residence in Australia. The power of one is a powerful thing indeed. This can have far-reaching consequences, consequences that can be amazing or alternately devastating. While incredibly, a few exceptional Nazis did the ultimate and risked their lives to save Jews and defy Hitler, and actively helped in saving many Jewish lives. An example of amazing is a gentleman by the name of Klaus Hornig. I couldn't get a great photo of him, but Klaus Hornig was a staunch Catholic who bizarrely ended up in a Jewish concentration camp with those he did not kill. He had refused to carry out the execution of 780 Soviet prisoners of war in November 1941. And after the liberation, so suspicious and paranoid were his fellow prisoners, he suffered at their hands because they suspected him of being a German spy, despite the fact he'd hidden French Jews under his bed in the concentration camp. And the most obvious in terms of devastating, I think we all know, Adolf Hitler, who in pre-war Germany coerced an entire country into following him on his insane journey to Aryanize the world, commencing with eradicating the Jewish population by barbaric means. Did he act in isolation? He did not. When I was in Germany a few years ago, I visited one of the most powerful museums I've ever encountered, and I strongly recommend that you, if you're ever in Berlin, you visit it as well. It's called the Topography of Terror Museum. What's so special about it is it doesn't focus on visuals of genocide. Doesn't have pictures of emaciated corpses, piles of human hair, piles of shoes, abandoned suitcases, or gas chambers. No, it focuses on the subtleties of complicit behaviour by a brainwashed population who went along for the ride, choosing not to question, choosing to take part in the worst genocide in the history of humanity. And it didn't happen overnight. It took years of propaganda and brainwashing. The power of one, gone horribly wrong. Here's an example the museum illustrates. Here's a Jew about to be shot into a pit. Take a close look. What do you see? A victim. Look at the man about to die. What is chilling is that he doesn't fight back. He is clearly resigned to the fact he's moments from death. He looks straight ahead, forlorn and frightened. But who's he looking at? Who took the picture? A photographer. Someone was hired and paid to document the moment. Someone was complicit in this murder, willing to shoot a photograph of the scene and be paid for it, we assume, staged and set up from the other side of the pit, out of view, with no conscience. An executioner. A German soldier didn't question his task to commit not just murder, but participate in genocide. And finally, bystanders. The other members of the group, the soldiers standing around nonchalantly watching the murder, having already seen the others meet a similar fate in the pit below. Another day at the office, nobody intervening, nobody caring. This is what happens when evil triumphs. When propaganda is not questioned or challenged. This is what we all need to prevent happening again to any race, any nationality on the planet. But we all need to take responsibility. We all need to be active participants as members of the human race, fighting against inhumanity. Be a righteous. Demonstrate the power of one. You have that power. Stand up and stand out. Many famous people have penned wonderful words. What did they know that we didn't? What did they see, understand? What ethical code did they choose to follow that we can learn from? Was it innate, in their DNA, or did they acquire it through experience? Churchill said, "Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen." Bob Marley said, "The greatness of a man is not how much wealth he acquires, but in his integrity and his ability to affect those around him positively." And finally, Elie Wiesel, Holocaust survivor, said, "We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented." How can we ultimately learn from these individuals to be the best possible version of ourselves? Take their words away with you today. Manifest the power of one to effect positive change. We all have that capacity. It can be as easy as starting by helping defend the victim set upon by the bully in the schoolyard. We've all seen that. The individual singled out and ridiculed for looking different, sounding different, acting differently. The one who offers the homeless person a meal, the pregnant woman your seat on a bus. The one who speaks out and stands up when they see wrongdoing. Start small, aim high. What sets the individuals apart who choose not to participate in or support immoral behaviour unlike others? Good Christians, Catholics, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, and the like, proud to stand up and stand out? Firstly, they check their moral compasses to make sure they are pointing in the direction of justice, goodness, and righteousness. And what also sets them apart is knowledge, rather than sensationalist hearsay or relying on biased media reporting. And they think for themselves. They aren't influenced by others. Don't be a sheep. When faced with a choice, be the one. Choose the right path. It only takes one to change the world. It could mean life or death for others. I'm living proof. If I can change just one of you, I have done my duty. Here I am with just a few hundred of those 500,000 descendants of life-saving visas who would agree with me. Thank you very much.